That was Sinister from Relentless, and this is Pentagram Part 2. This is your host, Jason.
And I'm Mark, and we're welcome. Welcome to the Requiem Metal Podcast.
Yeah, and we ended last week talking a little bit about the Relentless record and some of the things, this is sort of their Hall of Fame record. It's the record that sort of reintroduces people to Pentagram in the 80s and stuff. And we were kind of doing some research based on some of the stuff we told you in the last episode about this record. And before I forget, I should probably mention what it was is that the Bobby Liebling was playing with the drummer or the bass player, Marty, what's his face?
Yeah.
I forget. I don't have it right in front of me. Mark will look while I'm talking. And they were playing in their sort of own incarnation. And Victor Griffin was 19 and hooked up with the drummer,
Joe Hasselvander.
Yeah, Hasselvander. Jeez, I don't have names.
Or Hasselvander.
Hasselvander, yeah.
Although he's an American son.
And they kind of started the whole Death Row band. And then
with Martin Swaney.
Oh, yeah. Martin Swaney was playing with Liebling. Yep. And then these two were sort of doing their own thing. And then somebody's girlfriend knew, I think it was Hasselvander's girlfriend knew, or no, it was Swaney's girlfriend or something like that knew Victor Griffin, this guitar player, and it told Liebling that like he's like the living incarnation of like Blue Cheer and Black Sabbath, and so Liebling was like totally pumped to sort of work with him and stuff. So, and one thing we should mention about like Relentless as well with Pentagram, and I'm sure most of you, I would imagine, listened to last week's episode because you're listening to part 2 right now, so we don't have to go too much into the band history, but image-wise, this is really a kind of a fascinating record, and we'll get back to Sinister in a moment. I'll bring up a story about that. But they're wearing upside-down crosses. They're wearing like black leather pentagrams. They're wearing a lot of
spike
like
gauntlets.
Yeah, proto-black metal kind of stuff. And on that last tune, you heard Sinister, which I think is like the kind of the bleakest, creepiest, doomiest song on Relentless, and I would argue one of the bleakest kind of metal songs that existed in 1985. Although really, technically, it was recorded in 82, 83, and it just isn't put out.
I think it's kind of stands toe-to-toe with stuff that Hellhammer and Celtic Frost
that's what I was going to say. That's the only other band that at this time, maybe Merciful Fate, in 83 with Melissa kind of stuff. But
as far as just like,
but that's
bleak,
like
morose atmosphere.
Yeah, but that's more brighter in terms of like the musicality of it.
And Venom was purely just image. It wasn't really getting anything out, that kind of like dread out of the music itself, more just the imagery.
Sure. And I know like with this song Sinister, Victor Griffin kind of feels kind of weird about it because of how like in your face satanic the lyrics are, and he said it almost kind of bothers him looking back on it today because it's like proto black metal kind of lyrics and stuff like that. It's not the devil on your trail, it's almost like satanic kind of stuff. It's different than what Sabbath and then some of the other bands were kind of talking about, the fear of Satan. This is like straight up there, and it fits with the tone of the tune. That's why we sort of open with this to sort of give you like a much more bleaker picture of where the band's going, certainly with the next record, Day of Reckoning, which is probably their most morose record as a whole. But one thing that's really cool, and you sort of mentioned, it kind of has a Spinal Tap sort of thing, is that kind of like a breakdown in the middle. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cathedral does some like great sort of cliche breakdowns too, where like Dorian will be like, all right, like kind of. And it's almost like the sort of template for that, and some really cool soloing stuff from Griffin as well in this song. It's some of the better soloing, I think, alongside Sign of the Wolf from this record. But before we go any further, one thing we were kind of looking at, going back over some of our show notes and things, and one thing I wanted to point out that we did not mention last episode is on Star Lady, that great guitar piece song. That song was written by a guy that we never even really mentioned, a guy by the name of Randy Palmer, and he plays most of the guitar leads and things on that. I don't know if you had him on your show notes, but I don't think we mentioned him. And Randy Palmer actually died the year after First Days Here was put out. Marty
Iverson plays guitar on that particular recording, which I had written down, but I didn't have an arrow pointing to the song.
Yeah, so Randy Palmer, again, kind of a big influence, because that was, Star Lady, a lot of people believe is like the best song of that early era of Pentagram. Mm-hmm. He didn't get much credit, and he passed away after that collection was sort of put out. So just kind of giving some props there, especially for you diehard Pentagram people who are maybe checking our facts out a little bit. But Relentless, we talked pretty endlessly about last episode, but I did mention it's kind of a contemporary with the Troubles and the Vituses and the Witchfinder Generals. And one of the things about Pentagram too is, speaking of Witchfinder General, is that Pentagram, unlike Sabbath per se, was drawing in a lot more of the new wave of British heavy metal kind of influences, I think, with some of the melodic dynamics and things. And so that's worth mentioning, I think, because it sets them apart from some of the other, I guess, doom bands of that era.
And Hasselvander was in Raven.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, was he in Raven prior, or you mean years later?
I think it was like 87 on or something.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So
he was in a fusion jazz band before he got into Pentagram.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So speaking of Spinal Tap, so Relentless. The reason we focus so heavily on this record is because, again, it's considered the gem of their back catalog. If you had to pick any record, this is probably the one to start with, and then you can go back and listen to the older stuff from last episode, and then kind of move forward with A Day of Reckoning, Be Forewarned, and some of the stuff that even we're not terribly familiar with. Review Your Choices. I think you have, correct?
I've got Sub-Basement.
And Sub-Basement.
Review Your Choices came out in 99. Sub-Basement, I think, is 02.
Yeah, and that's got some great production, really bottom-heavy, good-sounding records,
That's what, Joe Hasselvander basically did everything on those two records, as far as music's concerned.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're actually here to talk about sort of the end of the Victor Griffin era, I guess. And you bring in this wonderkin 19-year-old guitar player, you hook him up with Bobby Liebling, who at this point is in his late 30s. It's kind of a cool, like, match made in heaven, almost like a odd couple kind of thing. And they're the two most dynamic songwriters of this era. If you look at the song credits of these three records, Relentless, Reckoning, and Be Forewarned, it's basically these three that wrote everything. Yeah. And it's later that you mentioned that Hasselvander, kind of takes over the songwriting credits.
I don't know if he's actually takes over the songwriting, but his performance.
Oh, so okay. He's playing.
It didn't specify.
Gotcha. But before we sort of jump into Day of Reckoning, and we'll talk about that record in a second, we do have one more tune. We had planned to play this on the last episode, but for time constraints, we decided to move it over, and that's You're Lost, I'm Free, which is actually a song that was I telling you this, that he wrote at a roller skate an ice rink in 1970 on sheet music. And he said when he was writing all these songs between 70 and 74, he said in the Decibel interview, he wrote like over 450 songs on sheet music, but he said he was so coked out he couldn't even read the paper. Like he was just like writing things like over and over again. Nice. I'm sure he'd sit and kind of have to make sense of them afterwards, but this is kind of a leftover of that era that never actually got recorded, but it's finally recorded on Relentless, and kind of a cool tune.
Maybe that's why they sound so timeless, is because he wrote all these songs and now he's finally kind of going back and Indiana Jonesing them and deciphering them and all this.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And when you hear You're Lost, I'm Free, this song almost sounds the most like the 70s stuff on Relentless in a weird way, besides maybe $20 Spin, which was a re-recording, but it's got a much more dynamic vocal sort of performance.
What's kind of I think the whole song kind of is focuses on the vocal performance, the vocal melody.
Yeah, it's all like it's a vocal driven song, unlike a lot of what Victor Griffin and Liebling were doing with the rest of Relentless, which is more like a in your face kind of punchy kind of stuff. So, but Day of Reckoning, which we're going to get into next, this is, I guess, I don't know, for a lot of people, I don't want to say contentious, because it has overall, I think, a pretty positive feeling about it. But in terms of where you fit this into the back catalog of a band, I've seen some reviews that said it's their absolutely hands down favorite. I've seen other people have said they're kind of underwhelmed by it a little bit because the production is, it's pretty murky in a way and almost distant sounding. It's
got a weird production. I mean, this is 1987, 2 years after, and this was another one that was this self-produced as well?
No, I don't think. I think this was actually like put out in a better capacity. I mean, not a wide capacity.
Yeah, because I don't think it really got a widespread distribution until '93 when Peaceful put them both out, put Relentless and Day of Reckoning out together. Actually, it was on one disc, or it was a double disc set originally. Yeah,
and that all got put out in '93, and that's kind of what reintroduced them all. But it's a weird production. I mean, I guess I would describe it as distant, in a sense. It's kind of the same way that the production on like Epicus Dumicus from Candlemass sounds, where like when you hear Nightfall and the later Candlemass stuff, when Messiah shows up, it's much richer and fuller and bottom heavy, whereas Epicus is, but it's almost like it's just like morose and grim and very like, it doesn't have the flair that the later Candlemass kind of stuff has.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like Day of Reckoning is that record as well.
Day of Reckoning doesn't have much of any punch to it.
No,
or energy. It's all atmosphere.
Any of that Sign of the Wolf kind of sing along kind of stuff going on for it. It almost becomes like a template for like the early Cathedral stuff, the Force of Equilibrium.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you listen to a lot of the leads and stuff on it too, it's like a lot of early Paradise Lost kind of stuff, guitar tone, and it's just a really, really bleak record. It's like a almost template for, you slow it down a little bit more, like the Funeral Doom kind of vibe.
Yeah, the only up-tempo tune is a tune we're not going to play is the title track, Day of Reckoning, which kicks off the record. That's really the only thing that has a little bit of punch to it, and that's only 2.5 minutes, and then boom, it's done, and then you sort of dive into
There's not really much to that song. This kind of the...
and one of the things that Griffin's doing musically on this is he's using, I was doing some research, a lot of fourth bass harmonies, kind of as the tone of his guitar, which is kind of like comes out of some of the classical composers like Sibelius and like Scandinavian like folklore kind of weird compositional stuff in classical music, and you see that kind of come into rock and roll and jazz, like Herbie Hancock used it. And I guess the best example I found in rock and roll, besides like the King Crimsons and some of the prog bands, was Man of the Silver Mountain. Richie Blackmore did a lot of stuff with that, and so Griffin like is all over this record with a lot of fourth bass harmonies, as according to the research I was doing. The weirdest thing too is because it's such a distant, morose, kind of weird record, it also is it's fairly musically adventurous, more so than Relentless.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would equate this, to like Volume 4 in a way from Black Sabbath, which is a kind of a record that doesn't coalesce very well. Sometimes it seems like it's kind of all over the map. Yeah. Whereas like Masters of Reality and Paranoid have this like good flow throughout the whole thing. It's like one song kind of builds off of the other, and this has that sort of just really, Sabbath were doing shitloads of coke and drugs on Volume 4, and that's what
Snowblind did,
and Snowblind exactly. And I feel like maybe Day of Reckoning has some of that like disconnected kind of aspects to it. Maybe Liebling was in the midst of a deep seated drug kind of binge at this time. Who knows? But the cool thing, speaking of Sabbath, is you get a lot more audible bass on this record than you have had on some of the stuff. Very much Geezer-esque.
There's actually there's a bottom end of the record.
And of course, the riffs are coming out of the Sabbath, Blue Cheer sort of school. But here, I think more so than Relentless, you hear a lot more of the melodic new wave of British heavy metal stuff, sort of like building inside of it. And Cathedral will take that sort of style and build that into like how they do a lot of their leads. Electric Wizard will do the same thing. Yeah. And so whereas Relentless was recorded like kind of 81, 82 kind of era, and it's not put out to 85, this feels like a mid 80s record more. This feels like something that's...
It feels very different from its contemporaries as well.
Yeah. But I feel like they're learning from things that have happened in the 80s by the time they're making this record.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas, Relentless was recorded as, like, the new innovations are sort of upon us, This kind of brings some of that stuff in. The drums and guitars, because of the production, are kind of, like, light in the mix, whereas, like, the bass and Liebling's vocals kind of are a little heavier. A little more pronounced on it and stuff too.
Actually, in the next record, Liebling's vocals I think are a little low for my liking.
Yeah, he does almost some like Lane Stanley kind of like Chains type stuff sometimes. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they just need to like boost them up just a tad. But
yeah, so every record has different production. That's the weird thing.
Yeah,
Relentless has this sort of like raw demo production. Be Forewarned is probably the best production they have, but like you said, they mix things up, the dynamics of what they had been.
They need a really good producer, I think, to mess around
to capture that bottom end that they're sort of known for. So we're going to go from You're Lost, I'm Free into probably the most epic tune that this band's ever written, at least of this era, and that's Burning Savior, which is
which I'm surprised that Doom Band has not used that as a band name yet.
It's a great name, Burning Savior. And that's a cool ass tune. Opens with some really nice sort of clean arpeggios and stuff, and really, has kind of that sing along Goat of Mendes, Standing by Firm kind of sing along kind of aspect to it. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate, this song where it's placed on the record, I think it's like track 5, and because it's so like spotlight on it, track 6 and 7, the last 2 tunes kind of suffer afterwards. Yeah, because once you listen to the song, you're kind of like, okay, it's
kind of an album closer.
Yeah, it really is. So some good stuff, so we'll get into this with Your Lost I'm Free from Relentless, and then we'll sort of start a trio of tunes from the Day of Reckoning record. So we've got Burning Savior, Evil Seed, and then we'll close with Broken Vow, and we'll talk a little bit more about those tunes when we come back.
Yes, I'm free. No, I'm free. inside your brain. Rise above becoming fame. Take the plunge, play the game. You will ride and take his turn. Have no doubts, you are born to burn. No one chooses the right hand turn. Go to Mendez, standing by fam. You're walking through darkness. Don't need to look behind. The gates are open for you. You're welcome here inside. No more listening to reason. No more asking why. Accept what you are given. No more guilt-ridden sighs. better out of my way of thinking. It's come to an end, but I'm still singing. Voices in my head are telling me to change. My soul is screaming out, God damn. Sitting and waiting for feelings to pass. They go nowhere, they last and last. Living in my world of complete solitude. No one can see what I'm going through. My mental wounds not wanting to heal. Tears fill my eyes, I drop to kneel. Voices in my head still telling me to change. My soul is screaming out, God damn. Right now, won't you listen? Taking my time, trying to
That was Broken Vow, Evil Seed, and Burning Savior. And then we open things up with Your Last, I'm Free. Broken Vow. Converge tune, and Evil Seed
is a He-Man episode. It's actually one of the better He-Man episodes.
There you go.
Space Seed, good Star Trek episode.
What's going on with the Evil Seed?
Evil Seed was it was basically like some plant dude that was like growing. Crap was growing all over Eternia.
All right, nice.
The seed of evil.
See, yeah,
very literal.
Seed of destruction, which is a arch enemy tune, I think. So. But Broken Vow, what's cool about that, that has a middle section in it that both Mark and I, you totally hear Snowblind kind of vying for type stuff. Totally. It's all in there.
Especially the guitar tone itself is like, because I was actually doing a lot of back and forth, listening to Sabbath and see if I could find songs where, they kind of aped the riff completely. But after I was just like, why am I wasting my time just to do this? But just to kind of feel the vibe.
Mm-hmm. To feel the Broken Vow, the Evil Seed. And Evil Seed has an ode to Sweet Leaf.
Oh, right now. Yeah. Won't you listen? Yes.
So Liebling, he wears his influences. He wears his emotions. He wears all his things that he loves.
This is over 10 years after Sabbath had put out a relevant record?
Well...
like that era.
Since the Ozzy era?
The Ozzy era. Because the Pentagram never really gleans any of the Dio era Sabbath at all. That's a totally kind of different vibe, I think.
Yep. So you're right. At this point, people's memory is not thinking probably immediately, oh, what a Sabbath ripoff,
Yeah.
And again, like we said on the last episode, I think to just say that Pentagram was just kind of an adjunct to Sabbath is really selling them short, because there's clearly a lot more happening here. They're a lot heavier than Sabbath ever got, a lot darker in a lot of ways.
It's actually quite different.
It's really almost operating on the extreme metal end of things sometimes. You can see why.
And with how underground they were too, it's just like they didn't even make a spot on the radar for people.
And one thing we didn't mention last, we were kind of doing some research about the rumors on the Kiss stuff, and you can kind of read more about that, whether it's true. Some people dispute it who were part of that Pentagram in the 70s.
I like to believe it because it's a ridiculous story and I like Kiss. So.
Well, one thing that is interesting about Kiss is they almost got signed to Columbia Records, but they kind of, some...
Columbia or Casablanca?
No, this is before the Kiss thing. So before, they have some of the guys from Columbia Records, they had like a contract like ready to sign, and the guys come down to like see them play, and like the guitar player at the time from the 70s, I forget what his name was, his amps like blew out and his equipment was all screwed up,
McAllister?
And so like they can't get like the sound they want, and then like an argument happens between the engineer and their manager at the time.
Was this where the drummer was fat and the...
No, that's and then so then they get chance number 2, and Kiss is in town right after they put Kiss Alive out.
Is this for Casablanca Records that they're performing
this is to get them to be on the tour to open up for Kiss.
Oh, okay.
So not to get on Casablanca necessarily, but somebody says to Kiss, to Stanley and Simmons, you got to go down and check these guys out at the bar, and like they play, and Kiss is like, oh, these guys are, they don't look like rock stars. The drummer's overweight, the bass player and the vocalist have bad skin, and the guitarist just stands there, I mean, Kiss was obviously, very interested in the showmanship and performance, which is kind of what Kiss is always about,
Yeah, if you've got a band that's not exciting opening for Kiss, I mean, people are paying a lot of money and they want the excitement and thrill back in the day,
Well, plus they said that Paul Stanley was hitting on one of the guy's girlfriends, trying to bring her back to his hotel.
Oh, probably. I'm not surprised.
So, good old Paul Stanley.
See, Paul Stanley's not gay. Everybody thinks he's gay.
No, he uses that to his social advantage, for sure. Yeah,
his charms.
Oh, he's hitting on Vincent's girlfriend. Yeah, so
nice.
There you go. That's
something good here. I mean, it's like back like in the cock rock days when you'd like be excited for your girlfriend to go
to give
a blowjob to
no doubt.
Axl Rose or whatever.
Yeah, sure, why not? Sure, why not? It's a badge of honor. I got crabs.
I don't understand
indirectly from Janie Lane from Warrant.
God,
yikes. But we've got, and then Burning Savior, we talked about that tune already, the sort of epic musicality of it, and you can obviously see when they're able to stretch out their wings, it's they can go into some pretty cool places. But we got one more tune from Day of Reckoning, which is actually an older tune called When the Screams Come, and this is a song that originally appeared, well, not originally, but shows up on the First Days Here, correct?
Yeah, and Okay, I was thinking I don't have the notes, but I thought it might have been on one of the 7-inches. But
okay,
I don't think
it could have been. It could have been, but so this is again just like some of the songs you heard last show, a re-recording, of some of their older stuff, and that's something cool historically, I guess, that I like about Pentagram is they seem to always, it's like Coltrane or like something like a jazz person does, where they're like constantly reinterpreting songs of theirs.
Well, the songs are written to where that is actually to their advantage. Like they sound good every time, no matter what era.
And when later on
this song's pushing probably like 12 or 13 years old at this point.
Yeah, and later on when we play Be Forewarned and stuff, the newer version of it. I mean, you can tell it's like the old version, but it's completely different. I mean, it's 4 minutes longer. I mean, they're doing so many different aspects and things to it that it's almost unrecognizable as the same exact song. And that's what's cool. When a band's not just like, doing the same, like Mother or something.
Well, even when we saw Celtic Frost, how they would kind of reinterpret songs too, like to the more.
Or you mean Triptychon? How they would
they were reinterpreting the Celtic Frost songs. But.
Yeah. So this is cool for this is a kind of a fan favorite. They play this live quite a bit, and so that's probably one of the reasons they re-recorded it. Is because probably when they were playing live, they had so many requests for this tune. So we're gonna open this set with When the Screams Come, and then we're gonna get into a set of Be Forewarned tunes, and basically the record comes out in 1994. So again, you're talking about a 7-year gap between Day of Reckoning and this. This was actually put out by Peaceful Records. So this is after they re-released Day of Reckoning and Relentless.
I think that might even been some kind of like clause in the contract to where, okay, we're going to reissue these for you and you put a record out for us or something like that. Because the band was basically broke up.
And so this sort of brought them back together to put this record out. And it's the last thing that Victor Griffin. Victor Griffin from Family Guy is gonna play on. He's a bitchin' guitar player, let me tell you. And obviously 94 from 87, a lot of stuff's changed in music, and they're bringing in a lot of more modern elements along with the sort of bleak, dark kind of stuff that you kind of expect from them. So you're going to hear some Danzig stuff, some Alice in Chains Dirt, Facelift kind of influences. For sure. You're going to hear Man in the Box, if you're not mistaken. And then you're also, I hear some of Fu Manchu kind of stoner rock stuff here. You heard Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride riffs, Cathedral riffs. They're sort of drawing from their contemporaries. It's like they influenced the whole early 90s doom scene and Peaceville, and now Peaceville sort of re-invited them in to like be part of that scene, And it's unfortunate that they couldn't like hold it together beyond 94 and sort of live through the 90s still on Peaceville putting out more records, but c'est la vie.
I think drug problems.
Yeah, there you go. So and one of the thing about Be Forewarned that we'll mention before we go to the songs, and we'll talk about the songs when we come back, is again the thematic elements. It's very much like a Solemn Nine kind of early Trouble stuff, in that the fear of God's wrath really marks this album lyrically to the point where it almost becomes I don't want to say like a white metal record, which is what they used to call Trouble and stuff like that, but it almost becomes metal. Yeah, isn't that great? I love that. But it becomes such a cautionary tale kind of thing. Much more. They kind of are really taking that element that you've heard traces of on the last couple records, and that's like the whole. That's what Be Forewarned is all about. It's the name of the album and then that sort of stuff. So, but we'll get into some music and then we'll talk about what you heard when we come back. So we got When the Screams Come from Day of Reckoning, and then we've got a quadrant, a foursome of some tunes from Be Forewarned with Too Late, Bride of Evil, which is the Alice in Chains tune, The World Will Love Again, and then Wolf's Blood.
The time that you take to find out life is not usually worth itself. Developing real, know how to get by, polishing all its wealth. Have you ever felt pain when the screams come? You know that you're dying. guess you weren't so cool. Now Satan makes your rules.
Wolf's Blood, The World Will Love Again, Bride of Evil, Too Late, and then we opened with When the Screams Come. So those last 4 tunes, of course, come from Be Forewarned, and we talked a little bit about the album itself, but tune like Wolf's Blood, which you just heard there, that's the one that I think had a kind of a real Fu Manchu feel. It's kind of dark, but yet it's sort of bright and catchy. There's always like a pop hook almost, and it comes from Liebling sensibilities, even like on the darkest, most morose kind of like tunes, like you heard on Day of Reckoning and stuff. There's still like always,
he's got that classic rock and roll, I think, just in his blood. Basically.
He still knows how to write a good tune, and that's kind of what he's never going to go into like Khanate territory, or even like some of the stuff that Wizard does. You know? But that's the thing that's comparable about Wizard, between Wizard and Pentagram, is Wizard, in the midst of like all their chaos and stuff, it's almost like Just is kind of like the Bobby Liebling, like he still knows like a great hook, a great vocal hook, or a great guitar hook. In the midst of all that.
Well, yeah, their whole thing is that we started out doing shitty records and progressively get better.
It got better. So he's talking about that new Decibel interview.
But actually, 1994, I believe that Pentagram probably didn't tour much for this record, and so actually, Cathedral, they were in their kind of in-between phase, to where basically a lot of people that played on the first record, like Mike Smale, that was the drummer on the first record, was no longer.
And he'll actually end up playing Pentagram down the road, won't he?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he played on Show 'Em How.
Okay.
I think the one from 2004.
And he's from a band we talked
Penance
about.
and Dream Death.
Yeah, Dream Death.
But yeah, Victor Griffin and Joe Hasselvander, which I don't know if he's American or not, but I like to...
Hasselvander.
Yeah. They actually played with Cathedral.
I don't know if that's Dutch.
For the European tour. So it was actually Gary Jennings, Lee Dorian, Victor Griffin, Joe on drums, and then Scott Carlson Repulsion on bass, which would have been a pretty awesome tour.
In hindsight, that's a pretty interesting...
And actually, if you've got the Serpent's Gold, basically it's like a 2-disc best of that Cathedral put out a couple years ago. They have Funeral Request there.
Oh, and that's,
so you can actually hear them live.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah. And so I mean,
and they opened for Sabbath on the Cross Purposes tour in Europe.
Did they really?
Yeah, Cathedral did. Cross Purposes.
Cross Purposes, is that the one with Ice-T?
Possibly. It's one that I could care t-shirts about. It's from 1994 or 93 or something.
Oh no, that might not be the one. That's, I think, the one they did after Dehumanizer. I don't even know who was on that. Dehumanizer was the last Sabbath record that I give a shit about. That was like
Headless
91.
Cross, dude.
Yeah, but Headless Cross was prior to that. And I don't really care about Headless Cross. No. So.
Well, at this point, Iommi is the only guy in the band.
Yeah, but Dio's on Dehumanizer, so that's why.
Yeah, but for Cross Purposes.
Oh, yeah.
It's, yeah.
There's your random information about Black Sabbath that you came to expect.
Oh, no, I'm talking about Eternal Idol now. That's from 87.
Yeah, that's a piece of shit record, too.
That's the only one with
Sorry if you're...
Cross Purposes might have... Geezer Butler might be... Actually, this was the Geezer era, too.
Yeah, the GZR. Yeah, with Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory. Hey, I was a big fan of that record for like 3 months.
Yeah.
Had some just kind of sweet Fear Factory riffs on it, but kind of got old. But yeah, Wolf's Blood, one thing I want to point out is I think, for my money, it's some of the best guitar work on the record. Some really, really kind of heartfelt solos, and Victor Griffin's really playing some cool things. And then The World Will Love Again has this sort of, again, going back to the Into the Void kind of riff. But yet now you're mixing it with a lot of kind of How the Gods Kill era Danzig kind of stuff happening.
Yeah, even like more really contemporary Danzig sounding stuff.
Cool, repetitive. Yeah, really sounds like the new Danzig, actually. Mm-hmm. It's like track 2 or 3 off that record. One of the songs we played in our year-end one, Revengeful, maybe, is I think the riff that it totally reminds me of.
Minus the pinch harmonic,
yeah. So, pretty neat. And then Bride of Evil, of course, with its... Alice in Chains, Man in the Box kind of feel to it. So, but cool things happening. And the drums on this record, we didn't mention, sound a lot better than they did on Day of Reckoning. They're not so muffled. And musically, they're probably spread their wings the most. Day of Reckoning's adventurous in a way, but Be Forewarned is bringing in all these modern influences too. So
yeah, probably the overall best production.
Yeah, for sure. And it probably helps being on Peaceful.
Does it say who produced that?
Yeah, it's let me look. Well, I'll have to find out here in a second.
Yeah, no biggie.
But it's, of course, I can't find it when I want to.
So I guess, we're going to close.
Chris Murphy at Q Recording. I don't know. It was recorded in Virginia. So, but they probably actually had some money from Peaceful to do it.
Yeah, it's probably all in analog too.
Yeah.
Still.
And, well...
Yeah, but close the show out with an old favorite, reinterpreted again.
Be forewarned. The ultimate Robert Johnson sort of statement. I've lived this life of badness and drugs and abusing women and sleeping around and just this whole lifestyle, and it's coming after me.
It's one of the few instances where we actually just get to hear kind of Liebling's vocals kind of shine by himself outside. The guitar is just kind of gently kind of bubbling to the surface.
The opening has it almost reminds me of like a hair metal ballad that was never written for a hair metal band. It has that vibe to it without being cheesy. It's still serious enough.
It's still rooted, I think, deeply in the 70s.
Yeah. It definitely has something more balladish about it at the beginning, but then it certainly gets back to the sort of heavy vibes. But even some of his soulfulness that he does he kind of almost scats or improv some of the vocals, kind of goes off beat a little bit and gets out there. And it's a cool way to end things. It's the end of the record. It's the end of this Victor Griffin, era. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's a hell of an epic kind of tune. It's one of their longer tunes alongside the Burning Savior tune that we played earlier. So, but, hey.
Yeah, that's my only complaint is as they grow older, their songs get longer.
Yeah, they lose that sort of punchy kind of.
Oh, first, a lot of the wolf. Even the other songs we heard off of First Days Here is everything's between 2 minutes to 3.5 minutes,
except for Star Lady.
But that's kind of that'd be the epic. Yeah. 5 minutes is pretty long for a song back in the 70s.
That's true. Until Stairway comes out and really starts messing people
Nobody
up.
ever needs to hear it again.
Prog rock and then it gets all muddied up. But so hopefully, let us know which era you liked more. This stuff's obviously more rooted in, I guess, traditional nowadays sort of metal, but maybe you dug Part 1 kind of stuff as well. But, let us know on the Pentagram front. Let us know also if this is something you want us to do some of their more contemporary stuff as well. Because we have some of that stuff we haven't maybe processed or digested as enough to do a show proper yet, but maybe down the road.
Maybe after they put out their new record, we can kind of lump in the aughts into a show.
That could be cool. But shoot us an email, requiempodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook, Mark and Jason, or check us out at the website.
requiempodcast.com.
Yeah, where
you can become an executive producer by donating money.
Yep. Yeah,
which doesn't go to fill our pockets, but goes for operating costs. Because as we've said many times before, we usually end up buying a lot of extra stuff for these shows as well. We don't just purely go on the internet and download crap. Because we like to fill up our libraries and have every pertinent thing from every artist and whatnot. And actually, from the generous donations from the other executive producers, we have paid for our web hosting.
Woo!
For this trimester, or this basically for 6 months, which is fantastic. So cool. Thank you very much for that.
Appreciate that. And also one thing too that we mentioned, we did a couple weeks ago. We did the documentary show, and have we put up the show links? The links to purchase some of those?
Oh yeah, we've got Amazon affiliate links up. So if you're interested in any of those, you buy it, you get it. We get a little bit of kickback from Amazon.
Kind of cool.
So
and there's a lot of really neat documentaries that maybe you didn't hear about a couple weeks ago.
I even put on one that's a VHS tape, which I forget. Downfall of Western Civilization.
Oh, that's not on DVD yet?
No.
Damn. That's probably why I don't own it. I've just seen it on TV, several times.
Yeah, so if you want to get that VHS tape, we'll get 5 cents thrown our way or something.
Cool. But also leave us some comments on iTunes. That's probably the place where people
find us probably the most.
Yeah, they stumble upon us the most.
Star ratings, yeah.
Yeah, star ratings help, but also just we like comments.
Absolutely.
I like to know what we can improve upon, what aspects you like, what you don't like. We're always sort of looking for that feedback. So we want you guys to be the vocal minority and be the vocal majority out there. Kind of,
that's right.
Take over the podcasting world. So,
well, give us topics, because actually the last handful of shows have been all listener submitted, which has been fantastic.
Yeah. So we aim to please here on the Requiem Metal Podcast. But so be forewarned. You're about to hear the last Pentagram song. I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.
As I awake in the darkness, and I look around, there is no sound. No, it's so tranquil.
it's so calm like you. But now I hear a noise. Is there any way out of this nightmare, baby? I'm alone now. And you're laughing at me, but I take life in a way that you could never see. So if you're leaving, you better let me know, 'cause I've already started my plan, and I'm never gonna let you go. No. I've lived on the dark side of the moon, and I've been to the heart of the sun. Time with many ladies, and I killed many men for my 16th year.